Welcome to the ParentNet podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. In each episode, we'll be speaking with everyday parents and practitioners as they share with us gems from their parenthood journey. Keep tuning in to learn with us as we figure it out together.
In today's digital age, where information is just a click away and we are bombarded with diverse perspectives, it's crucial to know how to tell fact from fiction. How do we as caring adults separate truth from falsehood? And how can we help our kids do the same? My name is Aaron and I'm the host for today's episode. Joining me on this podcast, we have the privilege to have Darius Lee, Executive Director of Cultivate SG, an independent non-profit organization dedicated in cultivating culture together for the common good. Welcome to the ParentNet podcast, Darius. Thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
So let's begin to hear from you. What you've been up to recently? What's your work like with Cultivate SG? I'm sure our listeners would like to know you better.
I'm a married father of a young toddler and I have another child on the way. And I am currently the Executive Director of Cultivate SG. Cultivate is a non-profit organization which wants to see families and our society thrive for generations. We call this social sustainability. This involves individual rights and responsibilities, stable marriages, strong families, a cultural climate that supports personal and family growth and social harmony. So our areas of focus are marriage, family, children, and social harmony, and we support these values through research, education, affiliation, and dialogue. We believe that culture as the sum total of values, beliefs, and practices of people in society is not a battle to be fought, but a garden to be cultivated. So I'm also a lawyer by training and a locum solicitor at the moment, and happy to join to talk about this issue of truth. I think that is something that we all care about.
Welcome, Darius. So in today's digital age, how prevalent and concerning do you find the presence of harmful, fake, or insidious content on the internet?
First of all, when we talk about harmful, fake, or insidious content on the internet, we have to understand there is a wide range of harms. So this can include things like image-based abuse. What's that? Basically, you can think about, let's say, sexually explicit images, nude images being circulated without consent, and things like that. That would be image-based abuse. Online harassment, defamation, cancel campaigns or cancel culture, scams, incitement to self-harm or suicide, child abuse content, terrorism, and you name it. There's a whole wide range out there. If you think about it, Singapore is one of the most digitally connected countries in the world. And if you and I just look around our own lives, much of our life actually takes place online. So it's not surprising that we see all kinds of harmful online content as well. So let me just cite some statistics. If you think about statistics from the Singapore Police Force, they have reported that the number of scam and cybercrime cases increased by 49.6% to more than 50,000 in 2023 compared to around 33,000 cases in 2022. And these are staggering statistics. And they tell us that scammers tend to reach out to victims through social media, messaging platforms, phone calls, online shopping platforms, and other websites. I'll cite another study. So there was this 2023 study by this independent non-profit organization, SG Her Empowerment, SHE, and it found that 3 in 5 of respondents have personally experienced or knew others who face online harms. A larger proportion of the younger segment, age 15 to 44, that's the younger age group, reported personally experiencing online harms and witnessing online harms. And in fact, female youths are twice as likely to report experiencing sexual harassment compared to males. So I think when you think about all the different kinds of harms out there, there is a wide range, and in fact, males and females sometimes are affected differently by these kinds of harms.
You mentioned about the increase in online harm, the fact that there's 3 out of 5 that have personally experienced it. That's staggering, right? Imagine your child who's online just doing their homework and someone just would come in and just sexually abuse them online or sending them nude pictures. So from your perspective, right, what are the typical parental attitudes, right, regarding their children's internet usage, particularly at a primary school level where they start exploring the online space with less adult supervision?
So if you think about typical parental attitudes, there is a spectrum of views. And so sometimes when I give talks to groups, quite a number of the questions during Q&A come from parents of teenagers. And I would get all kinds of questions. And some of them are along the lines like, How do I talk to my child who is staring at the phone all the time? Or something like, well, but they have access to the internet for their schoolwork and they have to do it because they have to do their schoolwork. So what choice do I have? In fact, the schools require them to do it. Then on the other hand, I know quite a number. In fact, these are those with younger children. And so they start out with very, very strict rules for screen time. For example, 1 hour of TV per week, no other screen time. No phone, no internet, no laptop, nothing. Just basically 1 hour of TV per week. But what I find most common from parents is this feeling like I have no choice. This idea like we are living in a society where there's so much internet, and in fact, you have to use the internet because everyone is there. If you're not there, you cannot do your work, you cannot do your schoolwork, you cannot interact with people, you cannot communicate with people. So in fact, I have no choice. My children have no choice. We all just have to be on the internet, even though we don't like it, but we have to do it. Maybe, Aaron, don't mind me if let's rewind the clock to put things in perspective a little bit. You see, for me personally, when I was growing up, internet was quite a new thing, right? If you remember, it was something that you had to connect the modem and you cannot use your phone. If the phone rings, the internet will cut off kind of thing. And for me personally, I did not have a handphone until I was in junior college, 17, 18 years old. But even so, it was one of those Nokia 3310 type of phones, right? So it's like a brick and I could call, I could SMS, I could play the game Snake on the phone, but that was pretty much it. You couldn't do anything else. There was no like Facebook, let's say, or YouTube on your phone. And it was also about this time when I was in junior college that people started using things like Facebook, if you remember Friendster, things like that started to become much more common. But if you think about now, and if you think about a young person growing up in the world now, the situation is very different. From the start, they have never seen a world without internet from the time that they were born. And our children are getting smartphones at even younger ages. So there was a survey in 2021 and it found that 2/3 of children aged 7 to 9 in Singapore use smartphones every day and are active on social media. More than 40% of them actually have their own Facebook accounts and a quarter of them are on Instagram. So I want you to just picture this. Children as young as 7 years old, already using Facebook, already using smartphones every single day, and already having their own Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts. Well, I think you and I, as adults, we struggle sometimes with phone addiction, right? That at night we are scrolling on our phones and all that. But imagine how that works for a young child. So what kind of harms might they potentially be exposed to? Well, I mentioned a range of harms, so they could be theoretically exposed to all of those kinds of harms at once. But I think some of the harms that we think about may not be so obvious, but are still harmful if you think about it on a large scale. So one of these types of harms would be things like falsehoods, like false information. We all recognize that it's important to be honest, to have integrity, and that dishonesty is morally unacceptable. But with the internet, people can say virtually anything they want, whenever they want, whatever they want, and that is something that people are accessing even while, for example, they're in their own homes, while they're going out, while they're taking the train, and so on and so forth. So there are some people, of course, who spread falsehoods for the sake of ideology, money, politics, or some other motive. So for me, this is actually something I've been looking at for quite a while. Back in 2018, social media has a few features that actually make the situation worse. First, we can think about social media, right? They have all these algorithms and filters that promote content to people based on their preferences. So for example, if today I'm searching about healthy food, tomorrow, Facebook might recommend to me content also about healthy food, healthy eating, maybe some of these fitness influencers recommending all kinds of things to people, and so on and so forth. So it pushes things that you prefer. And secondly, it actually allows people to connect easily with other people who share their point of view. So for example, if I'm into dieting and healthy eating, I can connect with people all the way from United States, from Europe, from Australia, in other parts of the world who also share similar interests. And the problem is this: nothing wrong with connecting with people, but imagine if you're going into certain very questionable ideas or conspiracy theories or even radical kind of ideologies and so on and so forth. What happens is that once I start down this path, all these algorithms are going to refer me to more and more things that confirm my biases. And you call that confirmation bias, right? So that's the tendency for people to prefer views that actually confirm their own preconceived ideas. And so this can create bubbles or echo chambers online where there are groups that simply reinforce their own misguided perspectives. And what are the consequences? One consequence is, for example, to polarize society, right? So you have one group that is politically inclined one way, another group that's politically inclined another way, or perhaps they may be split based on other kinds of characteristics like race, religion, ideology, politics, more things like that. And it becomes split into camps of my group versus your group, and it develops into a kind of us versus them attitude or perspective. So if you see some of these phenomenon, they might lead to things like cancel culture, where people get attacked online because they say things that are seen as being offensive to another group. Or it can also lead to certain kinds of radical extreme speech that demonizes other people because of whatever characteristics they have, whether it's because of race, religion, ideology, politics, and so on and so forth. So that's the problem that you can imagine. For us as adults, we struggle to deal with it. What more for children, right? That children, of course, at this developmental stage where they are struggling to understand things, where they are less mature, perhaps has less control over their own habits and character and everything. They are exposed to all these contents from a younger and younger age. And I think that is something that we should all be concerned about. I would use this term. I think we're all facing a certain thing which we call a cultural lag. This means that technological advancements, they're progressing faster than our legal and moral norms. And so many people are struggling to catch up.
Yeah, do you know exactly what you just mentioned? The algorithms will just feed me my favorite football team. I won't see any other teams featured. And about the culture lag, if I were to talk to my parents about technology, I think they have no idea. And right now, I'm also playing a catch-up game in a sense. My son is 2 years old. He doesn't have his phone yet, but he's using it once a week to call relatives. And just sitting on the train, he's looking at screens. So on one hand, we want to control. On the other hand, we know this is a reality for them. They are living in the digital world. So it really sounds like a balancing act for parents, for young people as well, where we know that there is potential pitfalls of information that they encounter online, whether true or false. At the same time, we want to protect them, right? We want to take care of them, make sure that they don't listen to the wrong stuff or even just go down the rabbit hole of, as what you mentioned earlier, just going through misinformation. I'd like to zoom in now on the education aspect, especially how we can support parents and how parents can understand what are some things they can do. So how can we practically train our kids to recognize and avoid fake or harmful content online?
I totally agree with many of your concerns right there. And I think that resonates with me as well, because my son, he's a toddler right now. He's not quite 2, but he's getting there. And I think many of those challenges are something that I'm grappling with and figuring my way around. Now, I think when we are dealing with fake or harmful content, certainly you can think about some of the measures that parents can use, right? So these can be things like age filter software, safe search functions on Google. Sometimes there are all these fact-checking websites and so on that people can refer to verify information, but you realize that these can only help to some extent. Many of these filters themselves actually don't filter everything out, and it's impossible to filter everything out. And there are also many ways that children can learn to bypass these limits, and there are even websites that teach children how to do it. And their friends, for example, in school, might not have these filters installed, and so they could easily spread this kind of negative content to your child. So how do we deal with this entire situation? Of course, we should still do our best to protect our children from inappropriate content, but at the end of the day, our children will grow up and they must learn to find their way in the world. So in fact, the best way to protect our children is to equip them for the world they will live in, and that starts with imparting the right values. I would put it this particular way. When we deal with all these things, what we want to do with our children is to give them the right skills, the right abilities, the right handles to equip them, to prepare them for the world ahead. The best way to protect our children is to equip them with tools of discernment and wisdom to draw lines between true and false, right and wrong. And that is a practical way that we can demonstrate our love for our children. Let's take a bit of a practical example. Suppose your child, and I'm imagining perhaps this child might be about 7, 8 years old, And suppose your child finds an article on a website that claims John Tan is a racist. He said on Instagram that all people of a certain race are bad. Now, should your child jump onto social media and circulate that article immediately, condemning John Tan? John Tan might be his friend, John Tan might be a politician, might be a celebrity, whoever it is. Should your child ignore it? What should your child do in that situation? I think there are some important questions that we want to teach our children to process. And these are some of the skills that we can impart to them. First, check the source. Is it a fake website that is impersonating an actual news outlet? So for example, some of us might have encountered before some of these websites that pretend to be actual websites like the Straits Times, Today Online, and so on and so forth. But if you look at the URL, you realize that, hey, look, this is actually a fake website, it's impersonating, or some even impersonate government websites. And they look legitimate, but when you actually look at the URL, maybe they added one extra letter, maybe they changed the spelling of certain things. So it looks sort of like it, but it's not quite it. So you teach your children to verify these kinds of details. So is this website credible? Do they report things factually, or do they sensationalize things just to attract people's attention? And I think you know what a sensationalizing headline will look like, right? So of course, accusing a person of something serious, like being a racist, that is something sensational. So you might want to take a few steps back and think about it a little bit. Is this too sensational to be true? And perhaps I should investigate things further. So secondly, check other sources to ascertain the facts. What did John Tan say? Did he actually say, quote unquote, that all people of a certain race are bad? Do other sources, like other news sites, for example, confirm this or not? In this case, because this website claims that John Tan said on his Instagram, you can actually go to John Tan's Instagram account and look at what he actually said or wrote. Third, teach your children to distinguish between what is an opinion and a fact. So the article on that website called John Tan, quote unquote, a racist. This sounds actually like an opinion of the article's writer rather than a fact. So we have to understand that this might be doing it for certain political or other reasons. Fourth, encourage your children to think and reflect. Is the information factual? What should I do with the information, if anything at all? If I share it, is it going to be constructive and helpful, or is it going to be harmful? For example, am I actually going to harm Mr. John Tan by spreading a falsehood about him? And if that's going to be the case, perhaps I should stop, I should not circulate it, and prevent any further harm to Mr. John Tan, because this might have many consequences down the line. Finally, I think for our children, if they're unsure, encourage them to seek help from trusted adults. So this can be a parent, a teacher, or some other trusted adult in the child's life, perhaps a grandparent. So I think all these practical steps are very easy to use and very easy skills, but I think one step for us is to learn to apply this ourselves. And once we know how to do it, we know how to equip our children to do it.
You mentioned about John Tan, you mentioned about someone being accused. For a young person, we don't really put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. And as parents, maybe we have to teach empathy as well. It's not just about the practical skills of checking for such misinformation, but just to think, how will the other person feel, right, if I'm being accused? And to get the facts right first before even spreading this falsehood. So far, we've heard Darius share about some of the harmful and insidious content that can be found on the internet. The question is, how do we as parents guide our kids as they explore online spaces? In our next episode, Darius will share more about how we can impart critical thinking skills to our children so they can be responsible and savvy users on the internet. Do stay tuned. If you'd like to find out more about Cultivate SG, do check out their website at cultivate.sg or follow them on Instagram at Cultivate Singapore. We hope you have benefited from today's conversation, and we hope that you continue to share this podcast with a friend or to a parent. For more parenting resources, do visit our website at family.org.sg, and we hope that you keep tuning in to learn and to grow in your parenting journey.